Welcome back to our panel session now. So if you guys want to take your seats, we will make a start with that. Before we do start, Sammy and Billy, you guys are going to be our mic runners for the audience questions, which is a hint. We're going to ask you guys for some questions. Make sure you've got your roving mics. Yes, perfect, exactly. Spot on. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. I hope your break was restful and full of caffeine. The next, what time are we on? 35 minutes or so, we're going to have a panel session. And the theme of the panel session is how our earliest working experiences have helped to shape the paths that we follow and the impacts that we have. We are joined on stage by, I'm going to go left to right for you guys, by Ben Stalker, who is from the first cohort of New to Nature and now works, now works for the Ecology Centre in Scotland. Caris Graham, who's the programme lead for the Diverse Sustainability Initiative at IEMA. Thank you. Fatima Ibrahim, who's the co-exec director at Green New Deal Rising, a youth-led climate advocacy organisation. Flavia Ojok, the head of early talent and inclusion at Derbyshire Wildlife Trust. And Drew Bennellick, who's head of landscape, sea and nature at the National Lottery Heritage Fund and the original conceiver of the New to Nature programme. There you go. So we are going to start off at the beginning for all of you, which is where a lot of these guys will kind of find themselves at now. So tell us about your, well, first of all, I want you guys to give us like 60 seconds where you can tell us a little bit about more about what you do now, because those titles all sound really cool, but we want to know a little bit more depth. And then I'm going to ask you to go into like your early career experiences. So Ben, should we start with you? Yeah. Give us like 60 seconds. What do you do within your role that we just described?
Yeah. So at the moment, I am in charge of what happens with all the volunteers that are in the garden at my work, as I'm a market gardener. So we grow fruit and veg for the community and surrounding areas in the best way possible without any food miles or things like this, and take volunteers in to teach them how to grow their own fruit and veg and show them the sort of benefits that has, taste-wise, price-wise, mental health benefits. It all sort of falls under that umbrella. So having been involved with it and the sort of digging and all that stuff for the first year, now having done it all, I'm sort of in charge of what happens this year and what the rest of the guys will be doing across the year.
Cool. And yeah, Caris, the same question, just 60 seconds.
Yeah, I work for IEMA. That's the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment. And I predominantly work on the Diverse Sustainability Initiative, which we call DSI, another acronym. I work on trying to diversify the profession with 40 partner organisations, all within the environmental sustainability field. Alongside that, we have networks. We have a People of Colour network, an LGBT network, and we are expanding this. So a lot of work kind of going on to diversify the profession, educate and connect.
Fatima.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here. I've heard so much about you all from Billy over the last year, and so I'm really excited to finally get to see you all. My name is Fatima Ibrahim. I'm the co-director of Green New Deal Rising, which is a youth climate organization that organizes young people between the ages of 16 and 35. And why we organize young people between the ages of 16 and 35 is because Gen Z and millennials have a shared story of only knowing perpetual crisis, whether it's economic, environmental, or social crisis. And that together we can organize for a better future, one that tackles the climate crisis, but also gets to the heart of the problem, which is an economy that's not working for people or planet. And so we take disruptive political action, but we also, put pressure on MPs. We're running electoral programs to elect a new suite of, inspiring leaders who can be our movement inside Parliament. And we're also campaigning for something called something similar to the program that you guys have been on, which is to ensure that the government can help pay for a program that gives opportunities to young people to take up jobs and traineeships in the jobs of the future, because we don't have the workforce to transition our economy to a green economy. We don't have the skilled workforce yet to be able to tackle the climate crisis, and we want opportunities for young people.
Yeah, Flavia.
So hi everyone, I'm Flavia and I work at Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, and my role there is Head of Early Talent and Inclusion. Essentially, that just means that anything to do with creating more fair and equitable access to employment within the sector, I am heads over heels for. So anything like placements, work experience, traineeships, I help create them, we create them within the organisation and we recruit people into them, and also what happens after there as well. So that's kind of my role. And encompasses that is also things around inclusion, which is all about making sure that we're an organisation that isn't just diversifying the sector, but we're actually working from within and making sure that we're an organisation that is fair, equitable, and ensures that everyone does have an enjoyable experience while working within the sector as well.
And Joe?
So thank you. I'm delighted to be. I'm very excited to be here, and I'll explain more in a while. But so my name is Bennellick. I'm I've got a brilliant title, Head of Land, Sea, Nature Policy UK at the National Lottery Heritage Fund. So Heritage Fund distributes money raised by the National Lottery. So anyone buying lottery tickets, 20% of that money comes to Heritage Fund, and we distribute it towards heritage. And I have the great job of trying to ensure that we support the very best projects we can for land, sea and nature across the UK. And so for me, finding ways to ensure that we're being really strategic in how we use that money. And over the next 10 years, we'll have between 700 and 800 million to distribute to land, sea and nature projects. So my keen desire is to make sure we use that money as best as we possibly can to make sure that we're trying to hit all the targets and nature recovery targets that we possibly can. So strategic, that's my interest, and that's what I find so exciting about this project.
Drew, I want to start with yourself. So the first question is about early career experiences. So what did you learn in your early career? How did that shape the work that you do and what you want to still be doing?
Yeah, so I actually did a degree in landscape architecture, and it was my dad that sent me on that course because they were the only 3 A levels. Geography, biology, and art, and the only career to follow was landscape architecture. So I ended up doing a degree in landscape architecture, which was fascinating. It was a very arts-based course up in Edinburgh, very focused on design, a little bit on horticulture. And bear in mind, this was quite a while ago, nothing on nature or ecology at all, which actually quite shocks me looking back at that now. And my very first job when I finished my 5 years at university was I went to work in Cambridge, and my mother was delighted when I said I'm going to work in Cambridge. She used to tell all her friends, Drew's in Cambridge. And they said, oh, what's he studying? And it was, he's working for the council. And I spent all my time, I spent 2 years there working for the local authority. And my key role was designing play spaces. And the play spaces that the city had were just not inclusive. And if anyone's heard of things like making space for girls, gosh, we were a million miles from anything to do with that, or providing equipment that was suitable for disabled people. So the first couple of years I spent was designing inclusive play spaces, and I learned so much from the experience of doing that. The other thing that I really learned from that was that as a graduate coming out of university, I was working with parks teams, and particularly parks managers, who'd worked up through the tools. And I was predominantly working with people who were I was in my sort of mid-20s, and they were in their late 50s, heading into 60s. So as a young person trying to come in and then explain why we might do something differently, I found that a massive challenge. And I used to have, many days when I was sort of nights when I was lying awake at night thinking, how on earth am I going to tell them that really hasn't worked? You need to do something again. And my boss hit on a good idea that I should go on an assertiveness training course, which I thought was a cracking idea. It was booked for the following week, but I had a meeting in my diary with one of the park managers. So I went into their office, and 6 of them are all male, all in their 60s. And I went and I said, I'm really sorry, I can't make the meeting next week. And they said, oh, well, we were going to cancel it anyway. And they said, why can't you do it? So I had to admit, I was actually going on assertiveness. And they said collectively, so are we. So all of us just became more assertive with each other. But it was a really good baptism of fire. So I think, age can be a problem, but you've just got to be really confident in what you're doing, be confident on your skills and ability and your expertise. And you can convince people to do things maybe in different ways or think about things differently that they might have not done before.
Flavia, same question. So early career experiences, was there like any specific learnings that you took away that helped shape what you do now?
Yeah, I think the thing that sort of sticks to my mind is I remember being in, I think it was like secondary school, like A-level time, and all I knew was like I was a really fidgety teenager. Like I really knew that I wanted to channel my energies into something, but I didn't know what. And some teachers might say that I was quite disruptive of that energy, but one teacher who did believe in me actually sat me down and was like, actually, I think you need to be with people. Like you work really well with people, you connect with people, do something for people. And I was like, well, what does that actually look like? And then she showed me sociology and sort of psychology and how that can sort of connect with people. So I ended up actually studying that. And through that, I discovered that I really actually just really want to make a positive impact. Like whatever that looks like, however that might be, that's what I really cared about. And I had an opportunity to actually go on placement. And at the time, I couldn't find any placement or wasn't successful in any placement that could pay me. So I ended up taking up a volunteer opportunity. And it was actually at a school, like not far from here in Allen Rock in Birmingham, those of you who know it. And that school was actually 98% non-white British. And I found my calling. Like, I was like, this is something that I'm so inspired to do. I'm connected with like these young people in front of me. They're connected to me. And it's actually, it feels like we're actually on a little bit of a journey, and it just made me sort of realise the importance of human connection, and that really then became my driver in everything that I wanted to do with my career. And that's how I suppose I ended up in the role that I'm in now, but also the fact that I realised that once I entered this role, I felt very disconnected from people. It's really interesting. So once I entered the sector, that's when I decided that's when I felt really disconnected from people. And that was because I suppose it felt like I was actually explaining the importance of people to people within the sector, and the fact that it was advocating for nature and absolutely and the environment. And it's something that is absolutely important to everyone, not just people who work in the sector, literally every single individual. And that's kind of when I found, I suppose, my passion within this, and it's kind of been my biggest learning, realising that like I feel like my own individual career mission is just to connect people and nature.
Fatima, same question.
Yeah, so I didn't really, the job I'm doing now, I didn't really know was a job that people could do, to be a campaigner or a paid activist. So when I was younger, I sort of was trying to figure out, I knew I wanted to, I had a purpose in life, which was to like, support people, and really believed in like the capacity of, humanity to like be better and do better. And so what does someone who, is a do-gooder with a big mouth do? They go study law thinking that is the profession in which I can sort of meet my life goals and aims. And so I went to university to go study law. And I don't know whether I actually believed that I would become a lawyer, but I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, these will be tools I will use, because if I know how to use the law, I know how to interact with power, and I know how to sort of get power and like distribute it. And so that was sort of my mission. But while I was doing that, from the age of 16, I've always volunteered in my local community. I was involved in a group called the UK Youth Climate Coalition, which was young people across the country who were campaigning on climate change. And what that helped me with is actually when I graduated university and was considering what do I want to do, my family is not involved at all with nonprofits or campaigning in any way. They do, community work, but I didn't know anybody in this sector at all. What helped me was all of the volunteering I had been doing since I was the age of 16 to 21 gave me a community of people, and many of those people were now older than me, were in other organizations. One of my friends happened to be getting a drink with my future boss and said, hey, I know someone who would be great for this job. And I think that's the thing nobody ever really tells you about university or just like navigating the world is, sadly, it's not about the qualifications you have. We're told it's about the qualifications you have. No one has ever asked me for my university degree, but people always ask me, hey, do you know this person or someone else recommend? So And that's, that's something that's inherent in UK culture. What is why the class problem is such a big deal in this country is that we still have a system that's based on who you know. One of the ways you overcome that is by going and involving yourself in initiatives and and building your own community, because it's that community essentially that will help navigate you through the work world. And that, when I did my first job as a campaigner and I left, I actually got a message from Hannah, who's now my co-director, saying, hey, I'd only been in a meeting room with her twice before, 5 years previously. And she messaged me being like, hey, I'm thinking about starting an organization. What are you doing? And 5 years later, we've spoken every single day and now have an organization that has 24 staff. And people don't believe that we've not been childhood best friends. And I was like, no, prior to agreeing to do this, we'd only ever met twice before. But we both knew from a distance that we were great at our jobs, that we really cared about what we were doing, and that we had a great reputation. And so that's probably one of my biggest learnings is like, when you're new into a workplace, don't put pressure on yourself that this is going to be the thing you do forever. But as long as you're doing it, focused on being the best at it and learning as much as you can about it, and then be good to other people, because it's those people who later on will help you land in other places and hopefully help you find your dream place in the world.
Thank you. Caris, same question. So early career experiences, what did you learn? How did it shape what you do now and what you want to do?
Yeah, similar to what Flavia was saying about kind of wanting to work with people. So I studied psychology, criminology, and kind of your point about the degree not really coming into much. It's more my voluntary work and experience that actually helped. So I volunteered in court. I mainly supported victims of domestic violence. I did a lot of kind of more a counselling approach. I did that for 2 years. I then became a probation officer, so completely different to what I'm doing now, and managed people who'd committed offences and tried to rehabilitate them. And actually going through that process, I asked if I could work with offenders who were on for racial discrimination. So I could sit and have conversations with them and actually say, you've met someone who is from a background that you normally discriminate against, or you've said racial slurs towards, and we can actually build a relationship. And actually they came out of the conversations, the people I spoke with, and said, thank you so much, because no one had actually shown me that I could have this kind of connection, or I could speak to someone and someone sat and listened to me. And through that, I actually realized I really want to work in kind of equality and diversity and inclusion. So from that, my friend said to me, who actually kind of acted as my mentor, she said, I really want you to do kind of consulting and get into equality and diversity. I said, I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. So a lot of it was research of my own. I went on training courses. An organisation luckily paid for me to go on some training to become a trainer. I then did a bit of ED&I consulting, and then I started my job at IEMA. My first time kind of in the environmental field, and I do really enjoy it, I have to say. But I obviously work on kind of trying to diversify the profession. Something that I learned was, although you have like such good intentions and you really want to drive change and you have like you want to do good things in the world, that's just not enough. It's that kind of piece you were saying about assertiveness. I didn't really have that to begin with. And then I work with CEOs, so like 40 CEOs at our partner organizations, I communicate with them. And one email is really not enough. I realized that to kind of drive change, you need to be so persistent. You need to be constantly reaching out. You need to be networking where you can, taking any opportunities. People come forward to me and say, I want to get involved in X, Y, and Z. And I'm always trying to give people an opportunity, writing blogs and things like that. So there's loads of ways to get involved. Just reach out to someone. I didn't use LinkedIn before I even started this job. I've learned about that. So there's loads of things I've actually learned on the job, and a lot more I've learned through work as opposed to through university. So yeah, that's kind of my backstory.
Thank you. And Ben, same question, but I guess more of like a holistic question for you, because you're kind of living in that early career stage. So are you feeling like you're learning things that you want to take forward?
Yeah, well, I've got quite a unique perspective on it, as it was technically not my first year in the sector, as before I'd already done 15 months at a charity where we taught people in the area how to cook food in the most fresh way possible and to make it healthy for them. And while doing that, I kept week after week discovering people did not know, for example, that carrots had a green top and things like this. That, and like, I instantly thought, well, surely not. But then the more it happened, I was starting to realize there was a real problem in that sort of area, and people weren't unhealthy because they were doing it on purpose and they just like McDonald's, but there was a real sort of learning issue and the opportunities weren't there. So from that, I decided that I would just totally switch sides, go to the other side and start learning how to do it myself. So in that way, as I started doing it, you then get these people asking just simple questions that would be the key to them almost unlocking this thing and getting the sort of gardening bug that I then picked up. So the year has just been full of sort of trying to infect people with that bug, if you will, and make it so that they get that sense that there is a problem here and it doesn't come from ignorance or anything like that. It is just a case of we need more of these opportunities. So by having these volunteers up and cycling through these people and giving them all these opportunities, it's been incredibly eye-opening, but constantly sort of coming back to this issue that the same thing happens over and over again, where you see these packets of things in the supermarkets and that's all that is ever really seen by these people. And then you say, well, the potatoes at the shops are dirty because they're in the ground and that's why, but making them know that this is okay and seeing that they then take this on and don't think, oh, dirty, but then accept that and try it and like, well, this is a little bit better. Then next week come back and say a totally different thing and sort of go through that procedure. So it's been incredibly eye-opening to sort of come over and sort of figure all this stuff out, as the sort of idea was to discover what the hell's going on, why is this the case? And now I do feel that I've got to that point where I sort of know this is what needs to happen. And from here onwards, that I'm in charge of what the volunteers are doing. That's the main idea, is just to make sure that they can pick up as much as possible so that I don't even need to be there. They can just take this to their home and in their daily life and talk to their families. And then that's how the message gets out and spreads.
I guess like an open list to the learning then.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so next question is about how you have overcome barriers to create a space where you can do the work that you guys are passionate about. And if we can, any specific incidences where a challenge has arisen and how you've handled it. And Ben, I'm going to start with you, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. So I had quite a big challenge in my traineeship, as about halfway through my traineeship, my general manager and line manager both moved on to different jobs. So with this being my sort of year of discovery, trying to figure out how to grow veg, all this mad stuff, to have that support just removed halfway through was pretty daunting. And there was sort of a little month of sort of limbo and thinking, well, what the hell's going to happen here? Is this all still going to go on? But then sort of buckling down and just coming back to that same thing, that I find it so important that this stuff happens, that I was like, well, it's all there. You know, we have the internet now. That's basically what happened. Is I would go to work, go on and look at what I needed to do, and then go on YouTube and go through the polytunnel and just sort of get it done, so that I could then go through all these little mistakes that people would then come up and potentially be discouraged by, and hopefully show them with my story in that sense, that I was like, well, I'm still winging it too. We're all winging it here. And then that sort of made us closer in the sense that there was not that sort of staff volunteer relationship that can sometimes happen where they don't feel they're equal, where I was like, we all are in the same point. We're all learning together. We'll all do that. And it sort of took off that huge pressure of sometimes when you're in a job, you feel like you have to be a total expert at what you're doing. But I slowly then came to realize that my job was not to be an expert at it. It was to try and get people to just do it and start. And that was probably the biggest challenge, was just trying to do that by myself. But we got there, and all the crops came through, and it was a big part of the volunteers that sort of, were trusting of me and went, well, yeah, we'll just all sort of do it together. And it was an incredible experience at the end.
Amazing, thank you. And Fatima, same question. So how have you overcome barriers to create this space where you can do the work you're passionate about?
Yeah, I mean, two things come to mind, maybe one specific example and one sort of generalized one. Years ago, I was in a workplace that I really loved, and I loved the work that I was doing, but I guess the direction of the organization and the organizational leadership essentially started to diverge from what I felt like was in line with my values. And, you know, that was like being a young person in a workspace where you feel like you found your dream job and you're doing all the things that you want to do, but having this existential crisis of like, I'm not sure I entirely agree anymore whether the direction of this organization is going. And I think in that moment, it was a really challenging time. And actually, I remember my mom reminding me that, you know, my purpose wasn't this workplace. My purpose like lived outside of it, and that this vehicle was like just one way in which I could do the work that I wanted to do, but that there's lots of other organizations I could be doing that in. And that's a thing I think I carry with me. And I recently went to a training that was very much on purpose, is like, it has to be your north light or your guiding light throughout your career and your life, is like the thing that, what is the change you want to make in the world? Who do you want to be in the world? And then make your choices based on that. And, you know, you'll work in tens of workplaces, you'll work with lots of different people, you know, but as long as you know how it aligns with your purpose, then that's the thing that I think allows you to sort of make difficult decisions. It makes you set up boundaries for yourself. It allows you to say no, which is a really important part of being in the workplace, is knowing when to say no when either something goes against your values or, you know, things are not working out for you. The other sort of generalized barrier that we all know about is that the sector I work in is not diverse at all, and hasn't massively diversified in the last 10 years that I have been in it. But what is amazing is that now that I run an organization, I get to do things differently, right? And I get to like have different recruitment practices. We've started up our own traineeship program that is actually in its final 3 months. I get to make sure that we sort of put aside resources to make sure that we are ensuring that we are working in line with our values. We run a leadership program. This is the 3rd year. Every year, 40 young people. And then we take 3 months going into communities to recruit young people from the sorts of communities that are marginalized from the national conversation. I have ethical work practices and ensure that, you know, we're not just working people to death, but people actually feel fulfilled in the workplace. And so I say that to say you will face barriers in your life, and it's always worth remembering them, because when you have the next opportunity, you have to make sure you remove those barriers for whoever's next. And then hopefully everyone is sort of working in a much more welcoming, inclusive, and ethical workplace. And that's part of where you get your fulfillment, is that we're all going to face barriers, but as long as you can remove it for someone else, then I guess it's worthwhile for, in the long run.
Flavia, same question. How have you overcome barriers to create this space where you can do what you're passionate about?
I suppose it goes without saying that it becomes kind of like emotionally taxing and exhausting when you care. And you'd think, and that means caring about anything, whether it's caring about people, caring about nature. It's an emotive thing, caring, and that means that you actually have to look after yourself quite a lot, because it's that emotive. So for me personally, I feel like it's leaning into like my safe spaces, my safe people, having an event, and when circumstances do arise or situations happen where I'm a bit like, oh, why do I feel like that? Or am I the only one that feels like that? Having somewhere to take that feeling actually galvanizes you quite a lot to actually move forward. They say quite a lot of like negative things about echo chambers, that they're not really great, that it's just the same voices speaking back at you. But sometimes they can actually be your safe spaces. They can reaffirm certain things that you might be quite unsure about within yourself and stuff. And I feel like that really matters, especially if you're looking at things like progressing within the sector, things like going into rooms that you're questioning whether you even belong in that room in the first place. And then you're sitting in that room and you're looking around and you're saying, actually, can I say anything here? Do I have a voice in this space? But I suppose my big takeaway, and what things that I always have to remind myself, is that you always have a voice. If you've got something to say, it matters. So it's actually platforming that a little bit and actually making sure that you're taking those feelings somewhere and you're not just sitting with them. I suppose that's how I make it through those difficult challenges.
I think that actually really nicely leads on to my next question as well, which is about what else needs to change and how the trainees that are here can help make that happen in the future. So, Caris, is there any specific actions that these guys going forward into kind of like the workplace can act on?
Yeah, I think when it comes to change, I'm like there's so much that needs to change from the organisation's point of view, and to make sure that it's accessible and accommodating to young, diverse people who are coming into the sector. I think things to take on board is just having a look at opportunities that are ongoing, like joining networks, reaching out to people who are doing a role that maybe you're interested in. I've seen quite a few people find jobs actually just through reaching out to organisations that they're interested in, reaching out to people, and not being afraid to say what you want to say, because the whole point is that you're bringing kind of like a different perspective. If something's affected you or something's impacted your journey, or you want to kind of make that change, please like speak up and say what the issue is or what the barriers are. I definitely think like imposter syndrome is a big thing. I struggle sometimes in meetings to speak up and say something, especially with kind of asking questions. I'm like, do I sound really stupid right now? There's always going to be them kind of elements of doubt, but actually like the perspectives that you bring into the sector that is kind of predominantly white middle class backgrounds, you will bring such a different perspective, and it's really appreciated. And without them perspectives, we can't drive, create change, have different processes. There's so much to be learned within the profession, and I think just be confident in yourself. You're always going to kind of make mistakes or learn. I'm still learning all the time, obviously kind of earlier on in my career, but take it as kind of as something that's good. So yeah, I would just kind of encourage you to have that confidence to speak up and reach out and connect with other people.
Drew, same questions. What do you think the trainees could specifically action on to make changes that you think need to happen?
Wow. One of the things that I'm really aware of, and this is obviously I've worked in the sector for nearly 30 years. And one of the things I'm really aware of is the same voices, and there's a lot of pressure on people like Maxwell Iambi might have come across, or Judy Ling Wong, Geeta, Ludra, Anjana, Catswell. These voices that they are doing their absolute best at many events to kind of shout messages across, but they need help, they need reinforcement, they need more voices. And I think that's what's really exciting about the group of people here. And I've been really impressed by the number of people who, you say, well, would you mind speaking at a meeting, or would you mind coming to an event or whatever? And people in this room have said, yeah, we'll come and do that. And I think that role, those who are willing and able and have the confidence and energy to act as those ambassadors, there are people that really need your help going forward, because I think otherwise we see the same messages coming from the same people. There's nothing wrong with that, but they really need to have that voice reinforced. And particularly if it comes from a young person as well, I think it's even more powerful. And I think the thing that I've really noticed, the sector has changed very considerably over the 30 years that I've been working, and there are far more opportunities now. Okay, there's bigger problems to tackle, but there are far more opportunities now that you can work in, and whether it's different types of career or different roles within the sector, there are really good opportunities now.
Okay, we've got about 6 minutes left, so this is our chance now to see if we can get some questions from you guys. Obviously, we've talked a lot about networking, having connection to what it is that you want to be doing and the direction that you want to go in, openness to learning, winging it as well, and yet still kind of knowing what it is that you're gunning for. I wondered if anybody might have any extra questions for these guys. Yes.
Yay, well done.
I guess I've got a question just from personal experience. It's like, how do you deal with being declined, or how do you deal with your worst moment where you feel like I'm literally beating a brick wall in your situation in your career, and how do you overcome that? What's the best way of sort of doing that?
Very good question. For anyone that didn't hear, it's how do you deal with being declined, and how do you overcome? How do you overcome feeling like you've hit a brick wall, which happens for everyone, right? Does anyone want to take that question? Yeah, go for it.
I think it kind of goes back to like your why, like what's your purpose, like what you were saying earlier, that if you have a very strong awareness of like sort of why you're doing the work that you're doing and sort of what your North Star is, that brick wall actually is just like a brick wall to overcome towards your North Star. And if you keep your North Star in your mind, it means that there's actually a walkway around that brick wall. That brick wall is just there for that path. there's actually lots of different paths available to get you there to your North Star. And sometimes it's actually not a you thing, it's a them thing, whatever that brick wall is. And it's actually acknowledging that as well, that it's this is not me, this is a moment in time, this brick wall's been arose because of this situation or these circumstances. And I'm going to take my learnings from this situation and actually redirect myself towards my North Star somehow.
Super, like so true. Like I feel like if you are putting your energy in the right way, like things happen. The universe has its way of giving you the right opportunities when you're putting your energy into the right into what you believe is the right path. So yeah, that's a really good message. Any other questions? Still got a few minutes. Yeah. Yes. Oh, at the back. Yeah.
This is a question to the panel to say, what more do you expect or should employers be doing to become more inclusive? What are the key things you are looking for? What are your key demands for a more inclusive conservation sector?
Caris, do you want to take this on?
Yeah, so I could list off a load of things to make it more inclusive. I think it's opening up them opportunities to people and taking advantage of transferable skills, because there's so many different skills that you get from different experiences, not just degrees. There's so many experiences you can take away and kind of transfer into a conservation nature kind of job. Like, for example, kind of just working with people, wanting to create change. There's so many different roles within it. And most of the people I actually work with haven't kind of come from having environmental degrees or backgrounds. They've actually just used their transferable skills. So things like that, and being more kind of open in the application process to take on board like different people. I always say to people to kind of remove like any desirable sections on job applications, because if someone with imposter syndrome is looking at that and like, I don't reach any of them desirables, they're not going to apply for the role. Just be specific in what you want, and anything you can be flexible with, be as flexible as you can, and really make sure it's an inclusive environment when they join. Don't just kind of say, I'm going to be inclusive and do nothing about it. Like, constantly drive change, embed it into the organisation, and talk about ED&I like every month, every board meeting, every SLT meeting. Just embed it into the organisation.
Thank you for your question. Any others? We did have a hand down at the front. Have you still got a question? Yes.
Coming behind you.
Thank you. It's sort of linked to the previous question, really, but is there one thing that would have made your journey to this current point in your career easier, that would have unlocked it for you, that you can pinpoint?
Is there one thing that might have made some kind of magic switch that would have made it right? System or process that might have made it easier for... I guess like you could even answer it as in like looking forward, what would be the one, if you had to pick one change to make, what would that be to make that easier for the future? Open to anyone.
Yeah, I would say the one thing that's, I suppose, I can only speak about it from a personal point of view, is it's made a difference for me is, I think we mentioned it upstairs as well, is just having a sponsor. And that essentially means that someone who actually can really advocate for you, because sometimes, I've mentioned it already before, it's exhausting having to advocate just for yourself. So it's someone who can actually say they've done this amazing work, or look at their potential. And that could be like your manager, that could actually just be your colleague, that could be someone who you might have met here in this room. It's just someone that actually can say, they're amazing, they will do amazing at that job, give them that opportunity. That will make the biggest difference.
Yeah.
And I guess something that's more in your control is like mentorship. I think like seeking out and finding mentorship is like really important. And I think there's like a cool thing in the culture, which is like, don't listen to the boomers, don't listen to like the people who are older than us. But like, I have 3 mid to late 40-year-old women on a WhatsApp group that literally are my lifeline. Any problem I have in the workplace, like just sort of messaging them. And then the thing it makes me realize is any problem I'm facing, people have faced a million times before. And then it sort of makes it a bit more simpler in the moment. Be like, okay, it will cut, like it's here, it will pass. It's a good place to get advice. It's also a good place to kind of go to with the imposter syndrome. When, just this week, one of the women in that group was like, I'm in a new job. At what point do you start feeling like you're good at your job? And I'm like, wow, you're like 15, 20 years deep in this profession and you still have that insecurity. It allows me to be a bit kinder to myself, being like, okay, this thing doesn't go away. Everybody feels it, it's human. And so I think where your workplace can help actually get you a mentor that and a coach, great, where you can. Collect them along the way. Like in your workplaces, seek out people you either want to be like or who have done things that are interesting, and just like go to coffee with them, get them on your WhatsApp, send them a message. That is literally the one thing that has gotten me through, I think, my career, is having those people.
I think it sounds like both of you from your answers, it's network again, isn't it? Like I think it always comes back, which is why the business card game that we've had everybody playing over the past 2 days is super important. But that network isn't a one-way thing. It's not about collecting people for yourself. It's about giving it back as well, right? There's like a reciprocity in that you have to. You're making those recommendations. You're advocating for people. And then it comes back around. Yeah. Right. Well, we're out of time, so please give them a massive round of applause for all the panelists. Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to ask you to vacate the stage. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to move on to our last session of the day, which is with Julian. Julian, this is Julian Glover. Julian, I'm going to pass it over to you. You've got 10 minutes-ish to do your talk. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, George, and everybody here. I guess I've got the easiest job in the room in that I really help give money away. It doesn't mean I've got lots to hand out today, but what we do at the National Lottery Heritage Fund is use that hugely generous contribution of lottery players, the 20% Drew mentioned a minute ago, to bring change for the better in Britain.